Hey everybody, coming to you, with unfortunate, sad events that happened in Memphis, Tennessee, and I want to spend a little time talking about the tragedy with Tyre Nichols and what happened with the police department in Memphis, and honestly, the lack of de-escalation, the lack of ethics, training, doing the right thing, and a pack mentality. And this pack mentality forced someone to get very injured and then succumb to their injuries. And I know it's not a happy time right now. I just finished watching the video that was released, a few body camera images, and then a video that was on a pole on the street that really showed the abuse. It happened when Memphis, Tennessee police stopped Tyre Nichols on the road. And it was a traffic stop. It was a traffic stop gone horribly wrong right off the bat. The officers got out. They were animated. They were not cool, calm, and collected. They were escalated. And they did everything in their power to pull Tyre out of the car. And you could see him being as cool, calm, and collected as he could ever be. I watch a lot of these styled videos of police events to research them and to learn from them. And he was like, I'm good. Oh, hey, I'm good. I'm good. He did not fight them. He did not brandish any weapons. He was just trying to understand why he was pulled out of his vehicle and being injured and harmed. There was taser deployment, pepper spray deployment. It went horribly wrong. He did the only thing he thought he could do in that instant is run away from the abuse that he was facing. He ultimately was found a little bit of ways down a few blocks, and it's very difficult on the body camera. We can hear things, we can hear cursing from the officers, we can hear very disrespectful things from the officers, but what we can't see a lot of visuals. But that overhead camera that was mounted on the light really brings forward that he was handcuffed. He was punched numerous times in the face. He was kicked numerous times. A baton was used to hit him in the face, and then he was dragged. He was dragged over to a police car. There were 5 officers that were involved in that. There was in total about 8 to 10, from what I could count, that were there after the initial incident. Nobody checked in on Tyre. No one tried to offer aid, medical aid for him. 2 firefighter, possibly paramedics arrived, basically checked him out, didn't see much. He was just left on his own. He eventually was transported to the hospital and succumbed to his injuries. He succumbed to his injuries because there was a pack of ridiculous thugs known as police officers, ironically enough, that went above and beyond the use of force and caused harm and ultimately death. So I want to talk a little bit about the lack of de-escalation, but we're going to touch base on the use of force. This is the use of force model. It's used nationally across the country for all law enforcement departments. The left side is least force, and it moves up to lethal force. So if we start least force, the first is officer presence. An officer just being in a vicinity, being in an area, walking their beat, going to an area that might be a little amped up. Just them being there in their uniform, being present as an officer of the law, typically de-escalates a scenario pretty easily, pretty quickly. We then have verbal direction. The officer gives a direction for someone to go here or disperse or move away from, or that's enough, or stop, come here. Verbal direction, very, very effective in de-escalation. Then we have the empty hand control. Soft empty hands, hard empty hand. Soft is pointing, maybe going to the back, or actually moving the person to a direction, but it's soft, it's open, it's not aggressive, it's just moving them to a scenario that's safe. Then there's the hard empty hand. This could involve some punching, some jabs. Again, it's not to hurt the individual, it's to really try to gain control in a safe manner that's not abusive. Moving up the chain here to more significant is the intermediate weapon. This is pepper spray, batons. This could also include like a beanbag gun, something of that nature. It is a weapon, but it's not meant to kill the individual. It's gained controlled. That is really what we're looking for, to control the scenario without using deadly force. And then we end this use of force model with deadly force. A firearm is typically the one that is used. Could be a knife. It could be another weapon that is used to kill the individual. So an officer is trained for many hours on the use of force model. And what we want to do is have them truly start with officer presence, verbal direction, maybe some empty hand controls if needed, going to the less lethal intermediate style weapon control. And the last should always be deadly force. These officers didn't follow this use of force. They didn't follow department policy. They didn't follow the training that they received. They are not good at de-escalation. They showed up agitated. They showed up escalated, and it went downhill from there. There was no real verbal direction. They went right to using weapons and force. They did some empty hand control, more the hard empty hand, but really I consider what they did thuggish and deadly force. Right? They punched numerous times. They punched Tyre numerous times when he was cuffed, hit him with a baton, kicked him numerous times. I don't see feet or kicking in the use of force model here. Dragged him. That's what they did. They didn't try to negotiate. They didn't try to talk through something. They didn't try to figure out if they even had the right person. They didn't necessarily give the verbal directions that were helpful or useful. They were more screaming, cursing, yelling at him versus giving him direct scenarios that could have been helpful. They could have backed up from the scenario and gave more verbal directions for him to roll over, put his hands behind his back, whatever they needed to do to gain control, instead of running in, jumping on, holding the person down, punching, kicking. They failed. The other officers that showed up failed. There was no, that I can see, maybe there was. If there was a failure. There was no sergeant. There was no leader saying, whoa, 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 enough here. Nope. Let's back this down. Even an officer should go to a peer officer and say, enough is enough. They need to step in between the individual and the officer if there is perceived beatings or misuse of authority or power. What did they all do? Well, we can see from the video. After Tyre was sitting there, not doing well, they all stood around like thugs, talking about how he had drugs, trying to steal guns, talking about how their leg was really injured after they kicked Tyre numerous times. Just a sad, sad, sad case of events. Training went out the window. Ethics went out the window. Doing the right thing went out the window. These are the 5 officers that have been charged. They've been charged with Tyre Nichols' death. There were more officers there. I can imagine those officers are placed on administrative leave, or at least are being reviewed by internal affairs of the Memphis, Tennessee Police Department. Hopefully an outside agency is looking at this as well. State police, federal, attorney general. We have really good cops in the world. We have some that aren't the best. We hope that officers wake up, go to their shift, put on the uniform, they put the gun on their hip, and they are ethical. They want to go out there, help people, do the right thing, save lives, make a difference in their community. That's hopefully what every officer signs up for the job for and continues to work the job for. And then we have others that are just crooked, are not right, don't do the right thing. And then you have some where things just go wrong. Things happen, they get involved, they get amped up. What I saw today from a crisis intervention de-escalation standpoint is I saw a pack of animals attacking, and not being able to check in with themselves, to stop themselves, and do the right thing. Were they upset that he ran? Were they upset that they got sprayed with pepper spray? Whatever happened, they went and found him and hurt him on purpose. That is what a pack mentality is. You could almost think of it like if this was a gang, and you've all seen this video, gang members sneak up behind someone, hit someone over the head, steal their wallet, and run away. This is what these officers did, only they're officers. They shouldn't be doing this. They did not use their training. They did not de-escalate. They amped it up. And Tyre Nichols, he was sitting there trying to comply, trying to do the right thing, not knowing what was going on. When they had him down and they were kicking him and punching him, he most likely, we'll learn with an autopsy report, but he most likely had head injury. May have been in and out of consciousness, maybe having trouble breathing. So he is not in the right mindset. He may have been fighting a little bit. His life was in danger. These gentlemen and the other officers that showed up had an obligation to do the right thing, to read it, to check in with their own adrenaline, and to breathe and use the training so that they can de-escalate themselves, and they all failed miserably. And what happened? Tyre got to the hospital and died alone in the hospital. His mom was unable to say goodbye to him, his family. All because de-escalation was not used. So where are we now? Hurt, anger. Why did this happen again? That's where we're at. Across Tennessee, in Memphis, across the nation, there's going to be a lot of protests. We need to remember we have to protest this. We have to show that this wasn't right, but we can do it in a non-violent capacity. We have to remember that there's going to be a lot of officers that are being forced and called in to go to these protests that are good people. We have to remember that these 5 officers made bad decisions. Their family, their friends, their community, there's a ripple effect to what they did too. Doesn't make it right by any means, but there's a lot of people that are going to be hurting. Tyre's family. So many people are going to be hurting and are actively hurting because of the scenario that went horribly wrong. So if you're going to go out and protest, if you're going to go out and say, this is not right, I'm done with this, let's do it where we don't burn down cities. We make our voices known. We do it non-violently. We do not want to use the same force that was put on Tyre. Self-care. Self-care is what's needed right now. Taking good care of yourself, reaching out to 988. It's the crisis line, the new crisis line, 988. You press 1, you get routed over to the Veterans Crisis Line. You don't press 1, you get routed to your local lifeline within your state. You could also chat and text with those services if that helps. Reach out to your therapist. Talk to friends and family. Do whatever you need to try to decompress from this It's okay to be angry. Sit in that anger, but turn that anger into love. Turn that anger into positive change. Turn that anger, anxiety, frustration into something that's going to send love out to the world tonight, because we need it there most. I'm going to be thinking about Tyre for a very long time. I'm going to be thinking about these actions of those officers. I'm going to continue training de-escalation techniques. Every time I get to train emergency services, police officers, social workers, doing these videos, think about that ripple effect, right? So try to go out there and do something positive in the face of this horrible, ridiculous tragedy that should have never happened. Take care of yourselves.